SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation. SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation.
රෝස සුවඳ තවත් දෙකෝ කලක් රැඳෙන්න ඩබල් පර්ෆියුම් ලුක් සමගින් එන නව සන්ලයිට් රෝස්.
Tonight, no satisfaction. The Archbishop of Colombo has called for international assistance to deal with government Easter attack failure.
There was something big behind. We want to know what is this big thing that happened behind this attack. Until we know that, we will not be satisfied.
Biased definitions. Sri Lanka calls on the UN to prevent groups from misusing crimes against humanity label.
We see many instances where certain groups have conveniently termed any act that go against their ideologies as crimes against humanity. Now, such a situation, in my view, is not to be encouraged.
The last resort. Northern and Eastern fishing communities hold high seas protest, calling for minister's resignation on Indian encroachment issue.
Minister tend to put the channels in Tamil Nadu and channels in the north and east of Sri Lanka against each other. If the minister is not part of this situation as the law, there is no rocket science behind it.
Step by step, the World Bank's latest report commends Sri Lanka's poverty reduction gains and offers a 4-point plan for recovery. All that and much more coming up on First at 9, this Sunday the 17th of October 2021.
Kill Smart Family Season 4.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, welcome to First at 9. I'm Dham Kekanai. Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit, calls on the international community to get behind the Catholic community's journey to uncover the truth behind the Easter Sunday attack and identify all who orchestrated the attack for political benefit. His Eminence, the Cardinal, made these remarks during a webinar organised to brief the Sri Lankan community in Australia on the progress of the Easter Sunday terror attack investigations. During it, the Cardinal also expressed his severe displeasure with the government and what he termed the President's attitude of inaction to protect his own interests.
The Australia-Sri Lanka Forum for Justice for Easter Sunday Victims held a webinar to educate the Sri Lankan community in Australia on the status of investigations into the Easter Sunday terror attacks. Addressing the event, Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit, took the opportunity to level allegations of failure to deliver the promises of justice at President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. The Archbishop also accused the President of playing politics instead.
Yesterday, the President, before his election campaign, went all over the place assuring our public that he will attend to this matter as soon as he comes to power. And at a meeting held immediately after his victory with the Bishops' Conference and with me, he assured us and promised us that he will carry on with the decisions of the Commission and he will implement all the decisions of the Commission. But what happened was, when he received the copies of the report, he immediately picked a group of ministers of his own government, which was a political decision, not an independent decision, a political committee to pick and choose whatever has to be implemented in order to protect his interests and whatever should not be implemented in order to also protect his interests. So it is very clear, because 2 days after the report was handed over, he called me and he asked me how I cannot do all this because there are some provisions in the report that if I implement, I will become unpopular and so. All these are considerations that are political. The commission is an independent commission, but the government has not implemented most of the recommendations of this report. But the report has been a waste of time and a waste of hope to all of us. We don't want to take revenge from anybody. We are not out for other people's blood. We knew that this attack could not have been done by 7 or 8 extremist Muslims. There was something big behind. We want to know what is this big thing that happened behind this attack. Until we know that, we will not be satisfied, because what we will be doing will be trying to hide and hoodwink everybody on this matter. We are not satisfied about the attitude of the present government and the present president, and we want justice. And we want the international community to back us in this struggle to find out what really happened on that Easter Sunday. Who really did it? Who made use of those characters in order to achieve political aims?
Now then, Sri Lanka's permanent representative to the United Nations, Mohan Peiris, calls on the body to avoid encouraging the labelling of actions that vested groups believe go against their ideologies as crimes against humanity. His comments came during the 76th session of the General Assembly on strengthening and promoting international treaty frameworks on crimes against humanity on Friday. He went on to say that such frivolous use of the term without proper examination of facts disrespects the very foundation of justice.
We must ensure that a tribunal must act on behalf of the international community. We must ensure that these tribunals serve the values of the international community. It is worth noting that there is a civilizational bias, a political economic bias, and an aesthetical bias in the designation of crimes against humanity as a core crime. It is now given that for a crime to be considered as a crime against humanity, it must be widespread or systematic attack direct against civilian population and with knowledge of the attack. These specific conditions must be satisfied to term crimes as crimes against humanity. However, we see many instances where certain groups have conveniently termed any act that go against their ideologies as crimes against humanity. Now, such a situation, in my view, is not to be encouraged and disrespects the very foundation of justice, and is absolutely appalling that they make use of such serious terms very frivolously without even examining it if the accusation falls under the definition of the said term. We are of the considered view that the core crime, in their predominant privileged position of being special, in the words of the academics, that we know when we see it, is perhaps much to be desired. And this is one area the International Law Commission should address. This public perception cannot be simply attributed to a sensationalist media, but regularly be invoked and be reinforced by international criminal tribunals.
Now then, Tamil National Alliance parliamentarian Chanakyan Rasamanikam called for the Minister of Fisheries, Douglas Devananda, to resign his portfolio due to what he termed the minister's failure to take action to address the issue of encroachment by Indian fishing vessels into Sri Lankan waters. Speaking to First at 9 today after attending a demonstration by northern and eastern fisher communities at sea, Rasamanikam accused Minister Devananda of attempting to pit Tamils in South India and Sri Lanka by not enforcing the country's laws that prohibit illegal fishing activities such as bottom trawling.
Hundreds of northern and eastern province fishermen took to the seas today in a boat protest against increased encroachment by Indian fishing vessels into Sri Lankan waters. According to reports, hundreds of fishing boats set out to sea in a flotilla from Mullaitivu to Point Pedro, hoisting black flags with #SaveOurFishermen written on them. The protest was organised to demand authorities to put an end to the illegal encroachment by Indian fishing trawlers into Sri Lankan territorial waters, which has to date escalated into attacks on Sri Lankan fishermen and the destruction of their equipment as well. The protesters say that fisher communities in the northern province are facing serious issues due to the lack of a permanent solution to this long-standing issue. Last week, First at 9 took up the issue with the Sri Lanka Navy, who say that the issue requires a diplomatic solution, as the sheer number of Indian vessels entering Sri Lankan waters makes it nigh impossible to police effectively. Further attempts to reach out to the Minister of Fisheries, Douglas Devananda, for comment on the issue unfortunately did not pan out. Tamil National Alliance parliamentarians M.A. Sumandiran and Chanakyan Rasamanikam also took part in the protest and called on Minister Devananda to resign if he can't come up with a solution. Rasamanikam also accused the minister of standing by idly as Indian fishermen brazenly carry out the illegal bottom trawling activities.
We had so many high-level delegations from India. However, Minister Douglas Devananda has been very quiet about this, and we have raised the fact that Honorable Douglas Devananda was elected to Parliament by the votes of the Tamil people who live in the north and the east, who are now suffering from the illegal poaching of fish. We actually continued the successful protest today by 11:30 a.m. in Point Pedro with the participation of all the fisheries unions and everybody. But there have been various statements on the media about how various unions have not participated, which is far from the truth. Most unions and most fisher folk in the north and the east have pledged their support, and we hope then the ministry in charge of fisheries will take the appropriate action or else would resign from its portfolio and set an example.
The parliamentarian then went on to explain that the issue remains in the non-enforcement of existing laws that prohibit illegal fishing activities in Sri Lankan territorial waters.
The point is that the Minister for Fisheries is failing to enforce the law that is already in place. So all that needs to be done is to enforce the law against the Indian deep trawling fish fishermen. So it's the Honourable Minister for Fisheries is hesitant to take action against that. We have enough reason to believe that his attempt to pit the channels in Tamil Nadu and channels in the north and east of Sri Lanka against each other. So if the Minister is not part of this coup, in situation like the law, there is nothing much more to that than enacting the law that is there. There is no rocket science behind it.
He then explained that the demands of the northern and eastern fishing communities remain a very simple and fair one, that the authorities take firm action against illegal fishing activities that result in long-term harm to Sri Lanka's marine ecosystem.
Well, what they want done about their lives is a long story, but right now they are worried about their livelihood. They want an end to this because bottom trawling destroys resources for the next few generations to come as well. Bottom trawling is not something that causes damage for a few weeks or a few months. Bottom trawling causes damage for a few years, for a few generations even. So all that the fisher folk in the north and east of Sri Lanka want is for that their lives will be protected. They don't want anything unjust from anybody else. They're not asking for anything that is unusual. They're not asking for anything that is not warranted for. They're asking for what is their real right, their genuine right to fish in their own waters.
The World Bank has offered Sri Lanka a list of priority areas to focus on to ensure a better pandemic recovery. They include measures to increase agricultural productivity and earnings, such as supporting farmers' transition towards higher value export-oriented crop mixes.
A World Bank Poverty Assessment report on accelerating economic transformation says that Sri Lanka has made great progress in improving livelihoods and welfare, but more needs to be done. It shows that poverty levels have shown a steady and gradual decline since the 2012 to 2013 period, falling in 2016 to 11% from 16.2% and even further to 9.2% in 2019. The report also commended the Sri Lankan government for progress in other measures of well-being, such as maternal and child health outcomes over the past decade, in addition to access to electricity. It cites improvements in livelihoods as the reason for such broad-based improvements in welfare. In addition, the World Bank report also offered Sri Lanka 4 priorities to focus on that would be key to its post-COVID recovery efforts. These include measures to increase agricultural productivity and earnings, such as supporting farmers' transition towards high-value, export-oriented crop mixes. Further, it says that the sector could also benefit from a mix of programs that support the adoption of climate-smart technologies, improved agro-logistics, or expanded access to value chains. The second priority, it says, is to address constraints in accelerating remunerative non-farm jobs in rural areas. This includes a focus on strategic investments in tourism that could support rural income growth, given its job creation potential for low-skilled and vulnerable groups. The third priority mentioned is for more support for broader reforms to increase labor productivity and create jobs. The final priority it suggests is to promote spatial transformation and strengthen inclusion, including priorities to close spatial disparities and improve access to basic services.
The National Plant Quarantine Service that submitted its final report on tests conducted on samples of Chinese-manufactured organic fertilizer confirmed once again that they contain harmful bacteria and is not fit for use in Sri Lanka. This was revealed to the media through a letter published by the Ceylon Fertilizer Company Limited, which also said that those samples do not comply with the terms of the contract, which effectively rejects a 12,000 metric ton shipment that is currently en route to the island.
On the 17th of September, Minister of Agriculture Mahindananda Alutgamage revealed in Parliament that harmful bacteria was detected in samples of organic fertilizer that was to be imported from a Chinese company, Guangdao Sivin Biotech Group. The company is said to be a fertilizer exporter to 60 countries, including the United States. However, another test was conducted by the National Plant Quarantine Service using more samples of fertilizer produced by the same company. At the time, National Plant Quarantine Service Director Dr. WART Vikramarachi revealed that these samples too showed high levels of Bacillus annuarina bacteria, which could be pathogenic to plants. A decision was taken by the Minister of Agriculture to halt the imports of organic fertilizer from Qingdao Seaweed Biotech Group despite 96,000 metric tons set to arrive in Sri Lanka in early October. However, the Chinese embassy in Sri Lanka then said that the company's products had already obtained organic certification from the world-renowned organizations such as EcoCert and Organic Raw Materials Review of the US. They also called the National Plant Quarantine Service conclusion hasty and without any scientific basis. Meanwhile, the Ceylon Fertilizer Company Limited has written to the Chinese company through its representative in Sri Lanka, informing it that due to the findings of the final test report of the National Plant Quarantine Service showing harmful Erwina and Bacillus levels, the shipment cannot be considered sterile and hence do not conform to the Sri Lankan standards. It adds that due to this, it concludes that the shipment of 12,150 metric tons of fertilizer en route to Sri Lanka do not conform to the conditions of the contract, which means in effect that the shipment will be rejected.
We will see you shortly with the latest on Sri Lanka's pandemic situation. Stay with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, the police have once again warned prospective holiday travellers to refrain from attempting to leave their provinces during the extended weekend period. Just yesterday, over 1,000 vehicles were turned back at provincial borders after failing to show proper reasons for travel. The Family Health Bureau, meanwhile, wants parents to prevent children being exposed to massive gatherings or risk further delays to school reopening plans.
At present, interprovincial travel restrictions in place until the 21st of October are being strictly monitored by law enforcement authorities at provincial borders, especially expressway entrances and exits. Members of the public have been advised not to attempt to leave their provinces without a justifiable reason. However, with 2 public holidays coming up in the middle of next week, the police say that they are aware of many families planning to take advantage of the extended holiday to venture out on leisure trips. This is exactly the opposite of what health authorities are calling for, given that recent spikes in virus cases were the result of the public doing something similar during this year's Sinhala and Tamil New Year celebrations. According to police, just yesterday alone, a total of 18,061 people travelling in 7,082 vehicles were detected attempting to cross provincial borders. Of that number, 1,090 who couldn't provide a valid reason were turned back.
අප මහජනතාවගෙන් කාරණක ඉල්ලා සිටින්නේ මහජන ඒකරාශී වීම සිදුවන ස්ථානවලට ගමන් නොකරන ලෙසත් මෙම පාලනය වෙමින් යන වසංගත රෝගී තත්ත්වය පාලනය කර ගැනීම සඳහා අවශ්‍ය සහයෝගය දෙමින් සෞඛ්‍ය අධ්‍යක්ෂ ජනරාල්වරයා විසින් නිකුත් කර තිබෙන සෞඛ්‍ය මාර්ගෝපදේශ පිළිපදිමින් ඒවට අනුගතව කටයුතු කරමින් අවශ්‍ය සහයෝගය ලබා දෙන ලෙසයි.
However, despite the best efforts of the police to tighten security, in some popular holiday hotspots, people seem to have evaded police radars. Up in the hills in Alla, large crowds were observed enjoying the cool climbs. Further, according to our area correspondent, a majority of the hotel rooms in the area were booked up by local travellers. Meanwhile, the same was witnessed in Hikkadua, where some tourist hotels were seen filled with local guests. However, with some schools in the island scheduled to reopen on the 21st of October, health experts are warning parents that exposing their children to mass gatherings could risk their plans of resuming their education.
දරුවන් වැඩි රෝගයේ බෝවීමේ වාතාවරණයේ තියෙන ස්ථානවලට ගෙරගෙන යන්නත් එපා. දරුවන්ව ආරක්ෂා කරගන්න මොකද පාසල් ආරම්භ කිරීමටත් සැලසුම් කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒ අනුව දරුවන්ට හදිසියක්වත් ආසාදනයක් ඇති වුණොත් නැවතත් පාසල් යන්න එක ප්‍රමාද වෙනවා. ඒ වගේම තවත් රැල්ලක් ඇති වෙන්න පුළුවන්. දරුවන් එන්නත් කරන්නේ ලබාගෙනත් නැහැ. දෙමව්පියන් එන්නත් කරගත්තට තමන් එන්නත ලබා ගත්තත් රෝගය වැළඳෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ නිසා රෝගයෙන් ආරක්ෂා වීමේ සෞඛ්‍ය ක්‍රමානුකූල පිළිවෙත්වලට හැමෝම අනුගත වීම ඉතාමත්ම අවශ්‍ය වෙනවා.
Latest studies released have suggested that statins, a drug used to control cholesterol levels, could lower the risk of COVID mortality. Professor of Medical Education at the University of Colombo, Indika Karunatilaka, confirmed this today, but warned that the study does not indicate that statins can be taken as a preventative drug.
Scientists and researchers around the world continue to carry out various studies on identifying different ways to reduce mortality rates and infection from the COVID-19 virus. The contribution of such research has led to the production and distribution of the widely used COVID-19 vaccines. Recently, researchers at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden conducted the largest population study to date on whether statins could influence COVID mortality. Statins are a medication that is recommended and used to lower cholesterol levels and are a common preventive treatment for patients at high risk of cardiovascular events. Experts suggest that results from the research show that statins reduce the risk of death from COVID-19 virus, a correlation that did not vary significantly among risk groups. The researchers noted that further randomized studies will be needed to ascertain whether there is a causal relationship between statins and COVID mortality. Professor in Medical Education at the University of Colombo, Indika Karunatilaka, is of the view that these findings highlight the importance of controlling underlying health conditions.
Based on the experience that we had from the patient helpline services of 247 and 1904, where we have spoken to over 60,000 patients and given advices, our experience is that vast majority of patients can be easily managed at home with very simple measures like good rest, adequate ventilation, good hydration and good nutrition, and maybe few simple medications like paracetamol. Other than that, they don't need any other medications because our immune system also, if you are vaccinated, that immunity taken together can easily fight off the virus in most of us, and giving certain medications to them can be harmful. For example, if you give drugs like steroids to those patients, what happens is their natural immune system gets suppressed, and that might prolong the illness and the patients might get severe complications. Same with antibiotics because this is primarily a viral infection. Another very important advice is if COVID patients are having non-communicable diseases like diabetes, hypertension or high cholesterol, they need to continue their medication and their condition should be managed properly because the data has shown that those with non-communicable diseases have higher risk of severe disease and mortality. Recently, there was a large-scale study conducted by Karolinska Institute, Sweden, which has shown that patients with hyperlipidemia who are taking the drug category called statins. Statin is a standard category of drugs that is used for management of high cholesterol or what we call hyperlipidemia in medical terms. It's a standard drug that is used in Sri Lanka also. This research has shown that the patients on statins who have got COVID-19 have shown lesser mortality compared to those patients who are not on statin. So this again highlights the need for continuation of medication and proper control of non-communicable diseases. Having said that, this finding should not be misinterpreted as statin as a treatment or prophylactic treatment that prevent COVID-19 because this study was specifically for COVID-19 patients who has been on statins for treatment for hyperlipidemia. So we have to be careful in interpreting the results, but finally this highlights the need for proper control of non-communicable diseases if we are to reduce the mortality and morbidity in COVID-19.
We will see you soon. Bear with us. Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, experts predict market activity to slow down due to high volatility and selling pressure during the week beginning tomorrow. The all-share price index gained 2.16 points to close at 9,623.81. However, the S&P SL20 index of more liquid stocks fell 0.49 points to close at 3,549.61 on Friday. With that, here's Dimantha Matthew to show us what we can expect in the market in the coming week.
We feel that there could be a bit of a slowdown in the upcoming week. We expected this last week as well. However, the downtrend that we saw last week was pretty short. Only one day we saw the downtrend happen, but now we feel that the current levels of the index seems to be peaking and there is a lot more volatility in the market than usual, a lot more selling pressure and profit taking coming in. So there could be somewhat of a slowdown in overall buying interest and possibly increase in selling pressure. However, if there is continued interest in some of the new sectors like the banking sector, diversified financial sector, there could be somewhat of a recovery or a change in the market condition. Basically, everything will depend on how the investors will take it up. So the traditional retail favorite counters, we feel there will be continued selling pressure in these counters, and investors may be shifting into some of the newer counters.
Now then, news overseas. Melbourne, the most locked down city in the world since the start of the pandemic, is set to lift their restrictions on the 22nd of October. By then, the city, which is home to 5 million people, would have been under a hard stay-at-home order for a total of 263 days, or nearly 9 months, since March 2020. While coronavirus cases keep rising in Victoria State, of which Melbourne is the capital, double vaccination rates for the population are set to reach 70% next week, allowing for the ease in restrictions. While hospitality venues will reopen on Friday, their capacity will be heavily restricted. More easing, including the reopening of many retailers, will come once 80% of eligible Victorians are fully vaccinated, estimated to come at the end of October. Australia, once a champion of COVID-0 strategy in managing the pandemic, has been moving towards living with the virus through extensive vaccinations, as the Delta variant has proven too transmissible to suppress its circulation. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.